Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to our next episode of Masters of Product. In our studio today, we have Steedan Crowe. He has over 10 years of product experience and is a senior manager or a senior product manager at Busbud, an online travel agency, and author of one of my favorite substacks, Roadmap Weekly. If you haven't subscribed, I highly recommend you do so. As for me, my name is Mustafa. I run a boutique consulting company where I help product managers adopt AI in their organization. I also have a Substack where I share practical tips and guides on how to automate your PM work so you can 10x your productivity. Steedan, welcome to the show. Thanks for being a guest.
Thanks, Mustafa. Great to talk to you as always.
Steedan, I've been looking forward to it. You and I have connected several times on this topic about PMs and using AI. So I'm so glad that we can finally talk and we can actually finally record. If it's okay with you, let's just jump into it. Yes?
Yeah, sounds good.
So let's start with just personally. I'm curious, as a senior PM, how do you use AI right now for your PM work? I know you use a lot for it for your writing and Substack, but I'm curious for the AI work for PM itself, how are you using it? And or
Yeah, it's
how is
interesting.
your team using it for that matter?
Yeah, the team, interesting. So there's a few different things that we're doing on the team side, but I'll talk about what I'm doing first. And so I use it every day, often using ChatGPT. I do experiment with a few other models to see if I can get different results. I use it for a lot of rubber ducking. So
Hmm,
this is an engineering concept. I have an engineering background as well, where you have a problem you've run into and you just kind of need to talk through it with somebody.
right.
And LLMs are a great thing to do
Yeah.
that with. You can
Yeah.
kind of type in
They're a
what you're
great
thinking,
sparring
what you're
buddy.
going
Yeah.
through. Great to spar with, kind of work around the edges and figure out, is there an angle I'm missing on this? Is there something I haven't thought to include? And so I use it for that every day. A lot of the work we do as product managers can be pretty rough around the edges and
Yeah.
isn't always concrete. And so it helps to just be able to have that sparring buddy.
Nice.
And I also use it to kind of check my conclusions, write
Hmm.
summaries, rewrite summaries or announcements for different audiences, and just anything that a lot of writing related things that
Yeah.
would normally take me a long time to do. It would take a
Yeah.
lot of work to go and rewrite and really kind of think through how I want to voice
Yeah.
this to a different audience. AI does a good job of that.
Nice. Of all the things that you've done, which is quite a big list, tell me what is the most complex thing you've done with AI that kind of surprised you?
Yeah, it's a good question. One of the things that I've done recently is running user reviews through
Hmm.
AI. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not really that complex. It is challenging depending on where your data is
Well,
coming from.
complex for the
So
AI,
sometimes just
remember?
it can be
Yeah.
complex for the AI because there's a certain level of quality that you want to get out of it
Yeah.
and accuracy that isn't always there. And so you really have to really work the process and how you get that data into the AI. It's also a lot of data. So like in our case,
Yeah.
we have 10, I don't know, 5,000, at least 5,000 reviews a week.
Wow.
And so it's a lot, right? So it's a lot of data and then trying to pump that through AI. And there's a few strategies that I use to get better results there. And one of the main things that I do is I just break it up into smaller tasks.
Yeah.
So take a look at this and tell me what the sentiment is. Is
Yeah.
this positive or negative? And
Yeah.
then once I have that, then I can move on to the next step.
Yeah.
What category does
I
this fit into?
yeah.
And so on.
I love it. We've talked about microtasks
Yeah.
for quite some time. So I think breaking things up into small chunks is the best way to use AI now till it gets more powerful. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And then I know you said that your team uses it as well. So I'm curious, how are they using it?
So they use it for similar things. We also use AI in particular with the company I'm at now, Busbud, for generating landing pages. And so there's a
Oh,
lot of content that you need to generate. There's a lot of
yes.
locations, destinations, points of interest, different ways of travel, and going through and manually creating hundreds of
Yeah.
thousands, literally hundreds of thousands of pages is
Yeah.
a lot of work. And so we do leverage some AI to help us do that, and one of my teams is responsible for generating those pages and making sure that that pipeline is running
Yeah.
smoothly. Doesn't always go as planned. We use certain indicators to help us decide what pages to create, and sometimes that can go awry. And we create pages for locations that don't
Yeah.
actually exist, but people are googling for them, and maybe they spelt it wrong or something. And so you know you still have to have a human element involved at this point. But we refine it and we make improvements to it as we go.
So you know what, you bring a good point. So, and let's take the landing pages, for example. So I'm curious, what is the process that you guys have implemented that works for you, right? Because it's not just as simple as putting a prompt in and copy pasting whatever the prompt gives you and using that as a landing page. Do you actually have anything else in between, like a quality check, or do you do things beforehand or after you use AI to just make sure that there's a sanity check or a quality check?
So one of the sanity checks we use is actually metrics. So we can tell on the back end, did this page actually convert any customers? And
Mm,
if it didn't, maybe something went wrong in the generation
right,
process and we can flag it
right,
and we can delete it that way. I think with a lot of these things, we're all probably used to being able to go into an LLM chat box
yeah,
and type in a query. Obviously, that doesn't work for things like this at
no,
scale. So we've had to build, you have to build pipelines around it. And
yeah,
there's lots of different ways to do that. There's lots of no code and low code solutions now that are popping up around this for some of these. And like, for example, for reviews, one of the ways that we do it, we have a pipeline that summarizes reviews automatically as they happen. And that's done through some sophisticated programming that the team has
right,
done. But then on my own too, when I'm doing some of this analysis, there's great plugins for Google Sheets and things like that as well that you can actually,
yes,
put a formula into a column and it calls the
yeah,
AI for you and sends the prompt. And
yeah,
so, we leverage a
yeah.
lot of these
I
things
love the
to make
fact that
this
you've
happen.
actually used or you've leveraged automation before you use AI to just help you with volume. Because you're right, when you're generating hundreds and thousands of landing pages, you can't do it manually, right? And then I like the fact that you
Yeah.
catch it at the back end by using the metrics. Thank you for that. Let's kind of zoom out a little bit, right? So it's great how you're using AI. It's great how your team is using AI. Let's just take a look at product manager role itself, right? As
hmm
we are very much in the beginning of this AI revolution and PMs using more and more AI, how do you think the role changes? Let's start with that first, and then let's go into how do you think it doesn't change?
Yeah, so a lot of changes. I think mainly, and we feel this across many roles, not just PM, but just volume. As you
Yeah,
can do more, you're expected to do more. And so I definitely noticed this trend where these certain things become easier and more streamlined. And so as a result, it frees you up to do more things. Sometimes the more things is just more of the same things.
yeah,
Sometimes the more things is more strategic things, which
yeah,
I think is a huge benefit. If you can free up some of
definitely.
your time with AI and have time to do more strategic planning, that's always a good thing. Unfortunately, it doesn't always happen that way in practice. And I talked to a lot of other PMs in the space, and I think when you look at the current job market and the economy and the way things are, companies are definitely leaning on just getting people to do more things in general. And unfortunately, that's not always strategic. But
Yeah. What do you think AI is? So that's the first part about how it changes the role
yeah.
of PM. The second part of that is how does it not change? What are some of the core skills that you still need, regardless of with or without AI?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that are even more important, I think, than they used to be. Previously, maybe as a PM, you could get by with doing a lot of busy work.
Yeah,
Now that AI can do the busy work for you and save you a lot of time, there's a lot more emphasis, I think, on analysis, data analysis, investigation, using your intuition and
yeah,
previous knowledge and industry
yeah,
experience, talking to customers. These are all kinds of things that AI
yeah.
still can't really
No,
do well. At least data analysis is getting there, but it's still, you know, every company's situation is unique, and there's certain things you need to know about
yeah,
your own data when you're looking into it. So I think that just becomes that much more important. And one of the things I've seen, at least in some of the PMs that I've coached that are in the job market, is there are a lot of opportunities, I think, still for PMs who have a background in analytics, business analysis, or data. And you know, as we leverage AI even more, we're going to have more data to work with. And so I think this is a trend that I'm seeing,
yeah.
um, being more data, even more data focused than we may
I
have been
I
before.
think you're absolutely right. I think some of the core things that we do as PMs stay the same. AI can help in some of those core things, like you said, about user analysis and looking at data, even getting ready for stakeholder meetings or even getting ready for customer interviews. But the one-to-one human interaction, there's even much more emphasis on it, right? Because AI can
Yeah.
help you do all the writing, so to speak, just like what you mentioned earlier. But the
It
execution of
can.
it still has to be done. And I think it requires the PMs to be even a much more focus on the EQ side of the PM, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Emotional intelligence is very important in this as well, right? And so
Yeah,
there's a lot of, there's people have emotions. Sometimes people don't want to do things, whether they have
yeah,
the data to back it up or not. They're just, I don't feel comfortable with this. I don't think we
yeah.
should do this. It's the wrong decision. And so being able to work through that with them, and AI is not going to get very far with that.
No, no. And I think there's a lot of PMs who are very good or who enjoy the more technical aspect of things and would just say, okay, you know what? Just give me a set of requirements. I'll write the PRD, or I'll do this, or I'll do that. And they're very comfortable doing that as opposed to being more customer facing and strategic. And now AI is going to force them to work on that muscle more as opposed to the others,
You,
right? And we all have our
and you
natural
combine,
tendencies.
yeah, and you combine AI with the economy, and you just have this flattening of these specialties. I know for a while there was a lot of focus on being very specialized in PM. I still think that can be important, and it can definitely give you some leverage in the industry.
Mm,
But yeah, there's more time to do more things, and so
yeah,
more things means a broader group of things that you need
yeah.
to be aware of and to be capable of.
Yeah. And I think some of the things that you talked about, the specialization for industry definitely is a big one, right? Because that is knowledge. Yes, you can use AI to give you an industry perspective, but then to evaluate the responses, right? And see if the
Yeah,
responses make sense or not requires an industry perspective,
and
right?
this can be hard, right? It can be hard to maintain, working in the same industry, just
Yeah.
in tech. In tech in general, we jump around a lot. This is very common, shorter tenures. But something that I'm very happy about is like this time around with Busbud, like I've been able to stay in the travel industry. I was in the travel industry before, so I had a lot of
Nice.
experience I could leverage and bring into this area of the travel industry as well, and that's proved to be very helpful. And yeah, I mean, the AI can summarize things and it can give you some insights, but understanding the way the
Perfect.
industry works and some of the dynamics at play
Yeah.
can be really helpful.
I like that. So allow me to do the same thing. Let me zoom out one furthermore. Yes. So we
Sure.
talked about how you use it, how your team uses it, and how the PM role changes. I'm curious, how does the organization change, right? Because this is a new technology, which will require new processes and a new way of thinking.
Mm.
And I know very few companies have even thought about how this is going to change their internal process. But I'm curious, what does the organization need to do differently to encourage or have their PMs adopt AI so they can be more productive?
Yeah, and it's not just PMs, obviously, it impacts many departments. I think, the first kind of knee-jerk reaction of a lot of companies is we need to leverage AI. We have to leverage AI. That's not necessarily the case. I think there's
Mm,
actually a case for doing the opposite. I talked to a data company yesterday, actually, who they're very much in the space of alerts and like emergency alerts and knowing what's happening in various countries. And this applies, well to travel. Obviously, you want to know if there's a war happening or a protest or something like that.
right.
And they've taken a stance of we don't use AI. We actually have real people reviewing this data and boots on the ground who are, actually telling you factual things about what's actually happening. And so I think there can be a case in some industries to maybe actually avoid AI in some ways. But I think like in terms of PM and process, it definitely finds its way in. And we have seen a bit of a trend around product operations. I think product operations teams can definitely leverage AI in some of the automation work that they're doing, and that's definitely beneficial. But also, again, with the flattening of roles and everything that's happening, at least in my role, I find myself doing more product operations than maybe I
Yes.
would have done in the past, and so being able to leverage this for workflows is really important.
Well, I
Um,
think you make 2
in
points. I think number 1 is the product ops role is probably where most of these quote unquote productivity boosting or efficiency things will eventually land, right? And the role
Yes.
of a product ops may change because they may become more of an enabler, or they may be the ones who are actually the ones who are writing or holding the library of prompts that everybody else, all the other PMs can do, right? And so, and the reason that this is just fresh, I was actually talking to a CPO just the other day, and that's exactly what he's doing. And hopefully, I can get him
Hmm.
as a guest on the show, because that's exactly how they're thinking about it. They're thinking about putting the product ops people as responsible for productivity and efficiency, arm them with the right people so that they can be the quote unquote subject matter experts in how other PMs can use AI, and then have them be the ones that train the trainer type of piece. And I think it's great because, I spent quite a lot of time with this company, and I think they're on the right track because they have really high productivity targets. And he's like, Mustafa, I just did my annual budget, and I have no idea how I'm going to do everything that I've been asked to do, because my budget remains the same. My work has gone
Yes.
exponential, and I don't have headcount. So this is the
Yes.
only way for me to do it. So
This is a very common story, right?
yeah,
A lot of companies, probably most companies, find themselves in
yeah,
the same boat right now.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, AI is a tool you can leverage, but somebody needs to know how to use it and
Somebody
needs
needs
to
to own
implement it,
it, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and own it. And
And there's a
like anything
management
else, like
part to it, right? Because you write something or
yeah,
you wite a prompt, that prompt is good
oh
for
yeah,
that day or for that
yeah,
time, and then it needs to change. And there's a lot of maintenance piece to this as well that I think that eventually people will get to. I think, you and I are way, way ahead of how we use AI, but there's a lot of companies who are still just saying, should we use AI or not? But as they start using it, these are the problems that they're going to face.
yes. There's
One,
definitely a. Oh, I wanted to go back for a second. Something you said reminded me of the fact too that even companies who maybe have not been proactive in adopting AI, it is quite likely there are people in the company who are leveraging AI and you
oh
just
yeah,
might not know. And so,
yeah,
also just having like even having policies around these things and how do we use it and what kind of
yeah,
information are we comfortable sharing with the LLM, and this sort of thing. This is something companies definitely need to get ahead
yeah.
of.
Well, you're definitely right. There's a percentage, and I don't know what percentage that is yet, of how many PMs are using AI, so to speak, to help get their jobs, to help do their jobs better or save time or whatever it might be. And then you
Hmm.
have the leaders of the organization who really don't know what these people are doing, right? And
Right.
so they're like, "Oh, nobody's using AI," but it's not the case. And my conversation with them has always been, the more you enable your entire team to do AI, the more you can actually enjoy the benefits of AI. Because right now, the individuals are the ones who are enjoying the benefits of AI, right? But the
Hmm.
organization itself is not. And so, if you can put in some kind of a program that then pulls the entire organization through, then you as an organization can start seeing those productivity improvements in the headcount, right? Right now, the way individual PMs are using AI is they can do the work, and then you know what? Frankly speaking, they can focus on other things, or they can take half of Friday off.
Yeah.
But that doesn't help the company, right? So it's an interesting mix of people. Where I have one more question, actually. Let's do that
Okay.
if that's okay with you. As we kind of enter this new world, any tips or advice on how PMs can acquire these skills?
I mean, if you haven't used an LLM, just use one. They're free
Yeah,
now. There's always free versions of these, so give it a try and experiment with it, and treat it like you would anything else. I think in product, right? We need to iterate and experiment and try different things, look at the results, and compare that to the expectation. And so, if you take kind of a scientific approach to it, then you can tweak your input to get the results you need. Definitely consuming material about this, reading about how to properly write prompts. There are good prompts and bad prompts. Maybe you tried it and you didn't get the results you wanted. That might have been a user error issue. You weren't giving it the right prompt. So I would implore you to try it again
yeah,
and experiment with it more, because when people are getting not when people aren't getting the results they want, it's often something farther up the stream. with either the
Yeah.
data or the way you're prompting it. So I think there's opportunities there, and take courses. I took a course last year on machine learning for PMs. It went pretty in depth. I had a colleague who was also going through it, and he's like, "How are you getting through this stuff? This is very intense." But it was good. We actually got to write our own recursive algorithm and do some modeling. And so I think having a little bit of an understanding of some of the inner workings of these things can be helpful. It's not necessary, but if it's something that interests you at all, there's lots of material out there, lots of courses. And I know somebody else actually who has a course and has been offering a course on LLMs for product managers and prompting. And so, I think you've got there's some good opportunities there, and that's a pretty good course, and can give you an in-depth view into how to do better prompts and how to get the value out of it. So there's lots of options out there.
Yeah.
And
Well, thanks.
if I I think the other thing is, because actually hear this as an objection, not just with AI, but with a lot of things from PMs, is like, there's not an opportunity in my current role to practice working with data. There's
Mm.
not an opportunity for this, right? And so maybe that's true, but it's probably not. There probably is an opportunity somewhere to use this. So, really think about, like, where could you leverage AI? And even if you have to go looking at your personal life for that and find somewhere to do it, like, just do it. You should be using AI. You should be experimenting with LLMs and some automation. And even if you have to go to your personal life to do that, do it, because if you don't learn this, I really think you're going to be left behind.
I like all three of your points because you're absolutely right. It's LLMs is one of those things in which you just have to have your hands dirty, so to speak. And if you haven't
Yeah.
used one, you need to crawl out under your rock. No offense, but you should if for even for the most minor things, it's great. And then your second point is that there's better ways to write prompts and there's ways in which you don't write prompts. And most of the time, it's easy to blame the LLM, but it's
Mm.
usually you got to look at yourself first. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
you know what? I just need to change that. And that's, as you've gone through it, you've gone through my course. That's where we spend most of our time is to how to ask the right questions. Right. And thank you for the shout out. I appreciate that.
Content, so it's worth it.
Thank you. And then you know what, the last objection that you said is so true. And you know what? I'm so glad you talked about it because a lot of PMs will make the excuse, well, I don't have the opportunity to do it, right, in my role. And I think that is, frankly speaking, it's a cop out, so to speak, because I think there's always an opportunity. It's just a matter of how you decide to use it. Doesn't matter what you're doing in as a PM role. There's a way that AI can actually help you, right?
There's somewhere you can
So
use it, and this is part of the challenge. And I get that, not everybody's going to excel at this, right? It's hard to look at processes and break them down and figure out where a process can be improved and where there's an opportunity to leverage
yeah,
AI. That's not something that's, I don't think, natural for a lot of people. And I think if that's the case and you're not sure where to use it, there's lots of great blog articles out there and newsletters that can talk about
yeah,
some of that. And there's opportunities to talk to yourself or myself. There's lots of people in
yeah.
this product space that are using AI and find out ways that you can leverage it and use it. And I can even
Well,
use it for
that's
things like
part
with
of the
my
reason for
kids,
this
right? Like,
series is to show people what is possible with AI. Because a lot of times,
yes.
and you've gone through the course, right? Even with my course, people come in and say, "Oh, I think AI can do this much," and then throughout the course, I'm like, "No, AI can do a lot more. It's just a matter of how
Hmm.
you look at it, right?" And so I think sometimes having that art of the possible conversation helps,
Yes,
right?
definitely.
This is great. I do actually have one more question, just based
Okay.
on what you talked about. I'm curious. Any favorite AI tools that you currently use right now? And I'm curious why they're your favorite.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about this one before, but I'll mention it. It's not specifically product related, but I think it says a lot about where AI is going and the possibilities. I stumbled across something called 11 Labs, and so I have a
Yes,
newsletter,
yes,
as we
yes.
mentioned, and I do a voiceover for it, and it's generated in my voice by 11 Labs, and so they have this model that generates the audio in my voice. I am continually impressed just by the improvements. I trained this model over a year ago, and every time I use it, it's better. I have not had to do anything to it.
I think that's awesome. I will have to definitely check it out. With that being said, Steedan, we are unfortunately out of time. You and I can talk about this forever. But thank you for being
Yeah,
such a great guest, and hopefully we can continue the conversation.
Sounds great.